What was the wacky world of Tex Avery?
We got some rights. We went to some, I don't know if it was his daughter or granddaughter of Tex Avery. I think, don't hold me to this, but for some reason I had a feeling she was living in France. I don't know why I think that. But Tex Avery was hugely popular in France. He was one of the original Warner Brothers animators, the Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes and all that. And just in one of these classic, brilliantly funny Warner's animators like Chuck Jones and Friz Freleng from that era. And I have to say, I have always loved that style of cartoon. That's always been my favorite style of cartoon, those old, and a lot of people feel that way, those old classic squash and stretch style cartoons. And France was a huge market for us. And I think Andy got the idea, because Tex Avery was so popular in France, to try and develop a new series that was sort of an homage. We obviously couldn't use any of the Warner Brothers characters. Those weren't our characters. But our concept was to develop a series that was an homage to those old shorts. And this series would be all short episodes, and we would come up with a cast of characters like Looney Tunes. But our characters would all be original. And I think we ended up with either 6 or 7 different original characters, one of whom we actually called Tex Avery, and that was a Western motif. And each one of these characters had their own cartoons, their own shorts, and they were different motifs. And I have to say, it was one of my absolute favorite projects ever to work on. We hired a guy by the name of Eddie Fitzgerald, who was well known in animation as kind of the master of this style of animation and a fan, somebody who really respected and loved this old style of animation. And Eddie, I'd heard of him. I think I'd crossed paths with him at Filmation or something. I mean, I sort of had met him, but I hadn't really ever worked with him, even though I'd heard of him for years and years and years and years. And we hired him to work on, we originally called it Tex Avery Theater. That was the working title of it. And we hired several different writers to work on it. And I think we all got in a room and came up with the 5 different or 6 different characters that were going to be, each that were going to have their own set of shorts. And I think that the plan was going to be, there was going to be 3 shorts in every half-hour episode. And we would just rotate all these characters. There was going to be 65 episodes. Each one would have 3 episodes, and each 3 episodes would be different characters rotated among the 6 or 7, if that's all making sense to you. Anyway, we would have meetings with Eddie. This is the only time I remember doing this, really. Well, one other time. But this is the first time I remember doing it, which was we just get in a meeting with a bunch of people and just spitball ideas for these characters, when we were first coming up with who these characters would be. And Eddie Fitzgerald just had this way of acting out the expressions and the gestures. And, conversation can't do it how funny Eddie could be in coming up with these ideas and characters and their affectations. And he would perform them in the room. And I mean, I don't remember laughing so hard for any professional meeting in my entire life. I would just be rolling, pounding the table at Eddie's antics and how he would imitate the way these characters would do and the stupid things they would say. And it was a joy. It was an absolute joy working on the development of that series. Once we got all the characters sort of worked out, then it became, we had to do 65 episodes or whatever the number was. It might have been 40, but it was a large number of episodes in a short period of time. So it became this incredible grind to try and get all this work done. And I couldn't be as hands-on as I would have enjoyed being, because it was just too much work and there was too many other things I had to do. But during the development period, I was quite active in it. And it was just sheer fun. And the whole goal of that series, it wasn't intended to be an educational series, unlike most of the series we were doing during that era, which were designated as, quote, FCC friendly, which meant complying with the Children's Television Act. But this show was just designed to be pure, fun, clever entertainment. We tried to make the humor sort of work on 2 levels, just the way those old Warner Brothers cartoons did. And we were irreverent and we were sort of subversive. And, a lot of people questioned what we were doing and felt it was sacrilege. And we got a little bit of a bad rap, I'd say, within the industry, because people so revered Tex Avery. And I think people felt, we were exploiting the name. But I personally am very, very proud of that series. I think, given the the limitations we had, there's some really, really funny shows in that batch of all the different characters, all different episodes. I mean, they weren't all winners, but I think we had a lot that were really funny and really entertaining, and one of my favorite shows to have worked on. Oh, I just remembered a really interesting story about Tex Avery. This is a good story. This is a very interesting story. This was, I think, about maybe 9 months after 9/11, after the Twin Towers tragedy of 9/11. I got a call. It was referred up to me. Somebody else at DiC had first taken this call, and they referred it to me. I wasn't even working full-time at DiC at that point. I had already moved to Seattle, but somehow I still was given this call, and I still had I retained my title, which was Executive VP, even though I wasn't working there full-time. Anyway, I get a call from somebody from the Defense Department of the U.S., Pentagon, and they're trying to investigate the 9/11 attack and Al Qaeda and how they got the idea and all this sort of thing. And somebody had reported to them that one of our episodes of Wacky World of Tex Avery, one of our recurring characters was kind of a superhero spoof called Power Pooch, exactly. And it was a spoof of a superhero. And I didn't even remember this, but apparently, and this happened before 9/11, apparently we had an episode where two guys hijacked a plane and flew it over the New York skyline, low over the New York skyline. And there were apparently scenes in this cartoon that were very similar to what happened with that horrible tragedy. And General, or whatever he was from the Defense Department, wanted to know all about whose idea was it, where did this come from. I mean, I think they were actually investigating, or at least contemplating, that somehow our cartoon had served as inspiration for Al Qaeda. I mean, and by the way, not to suggest that I believe that was the case, or even that they believed it, that was the case. And I can't imagine that Al Qaeda ever saw the cartoon, but I just thought it was incredible that I got such a telephone call, and that such a possibility was even considered. But it just goes to show why networks and broadcasters are so sensitive to what they put on the air in children's programs.
Truth is stranger than fiction as well.
Yeah. That was a strange call. That was one of the stranger calls I ever got.